The greatest opportunity is not to compete in legacy industries, but to combine our rich biodiversity and indigenous genetic resources with modern biotechnology. This is how we build a climate-resilient, economically independent future. You know, when you hear the word Nepal, you almost certainly think of one thing, right? Mountaineering. You picture Mount Everest, ancient temples, those classic legacy tourism vibes. But what if I told you that the actual true treasure of the Himalayas isn't being chased by climbers in snow gear, but by scientists holding pipettes? Seriously, the microscopic, high-tech biological assets hidden within these mountains are absolutely astounding.
Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are completely reframing our perspective. We're going to look at Nepal not just as a traditional tourist destination, but as a future powerhouse of the global bioeconomy. Basically, we are uncovering a hidden, high-tech, biological treasure map. Let's dive in.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Nepal's biological gold mine, move into the current biotech ecosystem, and then look at the systemic bottleneck holding things back. After that, we'll explore the commercialization engine, pioneer some next-gen frontiers, and finally, map out the 2030 bioeconomy blueprint.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Nepal's biological gold mine.
Think about the sheer scale of the geographic advantage here. This vertical bioresource gradient maps the country's extreme geography perfectly. Way up at the very peak, you have Himalayan bioprospecting. Because the climate up there is so incredibly harsh, the rare plants and bioresources have had to adapt in some truly unique ways. That makes them highly prized for international pharmaceutical and cosmetic markets. Then, as we move down the slope, those middle altitudes, they serve as these perfect natural testing grounds for climate-resilient crop breeding. And down at the base, we have this massive potential for industrial fermentation and bioenergy. It is quite literally a vertically stacked gold mine of genetic resources. Now, you might look at that mountain and think, okay, sure, but this sounds like a distant sci-fi dream. Well, let's see what's actually happening on the ground right now.
Moving right along to Section 2, the current biotech ecosystem.
The groundwork? It is already firmly in place. There's a highly skilled, multifaceted ecosystem operating right this second, and it's sustained by 4 distinct pillars. First up, academic human capital. Major universities like Tribhuvan University and Kathmandu University are actively building a really strong talent base. Second is agricultural biotech. We're talking techniques like tissue culture being heavily used for everyday crops like potatoes and cardamom. Third is medical diagnostics, with widespread PCR and DNA profiling already locked in across major hospitals. And fourth, bioprospecting. This is the active, real-time screening of those high-value Himalayan medicinal plants we were just talking about.
And honestly, this number brilliantly illustrates the real-world scale we're dealing with. Over 100,000. Right now, over 100,000 tissue-cultured banana saplings are distributed annually to local farmers. So this isn't just theory drawn up in a lab somewhere, it is actively scaling agricultural output and ensuring food security today. In fact, just look at the explosive momentum we're seeing in 2024 alone. Whole genome sequencing is now actively mapping out highly prized indigenous species, specifically the legendary Yarsagamba. On top of that, we're seeing rapid expansions in PCR capabilities and newly updated national biosafety frameworks that are actively de-risking commercialization.
So this brings us to the million-dollar question. If the raw potential of the Himalayas is so high, and the scientific momentum is clearly there, what exactly is the trap preventing this biological wealth from just booming on the global market? Why aren't we seeing billions of dollars in export value right now? Which leads us to Section 3, the systemic bottleneck.
To answer that, look at this striking visual metaphor. It's basically an anvil. On the left side, you've got this massive influx of raw value coming in, indigenous knowledge and university R&D. But as it tries to move through the research-to-market funnel, it literally gets crushed by 2 heavy forces. From the top, you have a severe capital deficit. Science and technology funding makes up less than 0.5% of GDP, and there is a heavy dependence on imported reagents. Then, from the bottom, there's a deep talent drain. STEM PhDs are emigrating because, well, there are no clear pathways to industrial markets for them locally. The result? Just a mere trickle of restricted economic output makes it out the other side. Unblocking this constriction, that is the primary investment opportunity here.
Let's see how we do that in Section 4, the commercialization engine.
So how do we unblock that trapped value and turn that tiny trickle into a massive torrent? The solution is the strategic commercialization engine. Think of it as the master key. You take the raw potential of native biodiversity on the left, but instead of forcing it through that crushed, constricted funnel, you inject investment, specifically high-throughput infrastructure and IP frameworks, straight into a processing core. Inside this core, skilled human resources and institutional labs act like gears. They transform that raw data and organic material into high-value global outputs. We are talking about global pharmaceuticals, scalable nutraceuticals, and climate-resilient crops.
But, and this is a really big but, there is a vital catch here. You absolutely cannot process these resources without a protective dome, the IP and biosafety framework. Without it, all this native wealth is incredibly vulnerable to two massive threats: unregulated extraction and biopiracy. Having a robust, clear biosafety framework isn't just a nice-to-have. It's the mandatory precursor to safely scaling Nepal's biotech sector. It ensures the value actually stays in the country and secures the assets so they can be safely used in international partnerships.
Okay, Section 5, Pioneering Next-Gen Frontiers.
Once that protective framework is secure, what kind of cutting-edge assets are we actually producing? What's the loot? Let's walk step by step through the bioprospecting process to show exactly how this value is created. Step 1. You start with a localized native plant, something like Yarsin Umba. Step 2. Through molecular extraction, scientists isolate the active biocompounds. Step 3. That extraction is then refined into a globally tradable asset, maybe a patented pharmaceutical or a super high-end cosmetic ingredient. This is exactly how you seamlessly convert localized plants into internationally tradable intellectual property. It's brilliant.
And hey, it goes way beyond just medicine. Think about how precision agriculture builds a literal shield against climate variability. By engineering biological resilience through advanced techniques, things like CRISPR, genome editing, and microbial biopesticides, the agricultural sector can drastically cut down its dependence on harsh chemicals. It creates crops perfectly tailored to survive drought, extreme heat, and salinity, ultimately protecting global supply chains.
Let's map out exactly what this transition means for the economy using this evolution matrix. It's a huge shift. In human health, we are moving from a current baseline of just routine PCR diagnostics straight to a future frontier of genomic, personalized medicine, which drastically reduces import reliance. In conservation, we're evolving from basic visual species identification to comprehensive DNA barcoding. And why does that matter? Because it not only halts illegal wildlife trade, but it actively enables the patenting of indigenous genetic assets. The economic impact of crossing this frontier is honestly staggering.
Finally, let's bring it all together in Section 6, the 2030 Bioeconomy Blueprint.
Let's look at how this entire ecosystem links together to become this sustainable, self-feeding engine. This infinity loop captures the overarching narrative perfectly. You see, biotechnology in this context isn't just some isolated academic pursuit happening in a vacuum. No, it's an interconnected industrial engine. Raw biodiversity feeds into advanced agriculture, which feeds into biofertilizers, which then circles back into food processing, pharmaceuticals, and environmental bioremediation. Every single cycle slashes imports, drives export opportunities, and fundamentally feeds right back into soil health and native biodiversity, ensuring the gold mine is never, ever depleted.
So how do we actually get there by 2030? Well, we ascend these 4 architectural stairs. We start at the bottom with the 2024 Catalyst, the investment pipeline. This leverages those updated biosafety frameworks we discussed to secure early-stage startup capital. Step 2 is building the foundational infrastructure and human capital. Step 3 activates the ecosystem by aggressively promoting university-industry collaboration. And finally, Step 4, market integration. This is where we fully commercialize the research outputs to reach our 2030 target of robust institutional capacity and equitable benefit sharing.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty massive thought to chew on. The blueprint is drawn. The genetic resources are waiting right now in the highest altitudes on Earth, and the commercialization engine is just beginning to turn. So the real question is this: will the rest of the world recognize this biological goldmine before Nepal's 2030 blueprint fully locks in its global market dominance? Keep your eyes on the Himalayas, folks. The future of the bioeconomy is already taking root.